Welcome, everybody, to the PWZ podcast. This is your host, Rick Del Santo, for episode 267. My guest, Ken Powers, this week, the powerful one, will be joining me in just a brief second. Just before that, I want to talk about upcoming events that coming in Connecticut, April 22nd. Tough and Talented will present their next show. I've uploaded some more of their footage from the last week's show on my YouTube, so go check it out. By the time you listen to this, it'll probably all be uploaded. But their next show at the Columbia Club in Torrington, Connecticut, go to Facebook and type in Tough and Talented Wrestling, and the event should come up. Not to mention, I don't want anybody to forget about the upcoming event for Coliseum Pro Wrestling, April 28th at the Elks Lodge in West Haven, Connecticut. Nothing has been announced yet as far as talent or anything. But like I said, keep it posted here, and you will hear all the news, breaking news here. I've been talking to Showtime Marcel Williams, my co-host for the PWZ podcast. We're looking at rearranging our schedule so that we can get him back involved on the show. So I'm looking forward to that as well. We're about to get to our interview with Ken Powers. But before we do that, check this out.
Hey, this is the one-man gold mine, the one-man enterprise of professional wrestling and all entertainment, Flynn Hendricks. And you better believe when I'm looking for a good podcast to listen to, I go to my own. I go to the I Know You Hear Me podcast hosted by me, Flynn Hendricks. That is such a fresh perspective for how you should look at life, too. I love that. And then when I'm feeling spooky, I go to my other podcast, Tales from the Haunt, where I want my head shoved inside a 15-pound silicone mask more. I want to have a bucket of sweat coming off me at the end of the night than just Jeff.
Dogs don't lay eggs, Flynn.
I hate you so much. Talk to other scare actors about what it takes to get into the world of scare acting. So if you're curious about how people became professional wrestlers, actors, prioritized their mental health, became entrepreneurs, avoided burnout, or got into scare acting, you need to go check out I Know You Hear Me and Tales from the Haunt, available on all podcasting platforms. And I know you hear me.
World Wrestling Extreme makes its Natick, Massachusetts debut with Reloaded Saturday night, March 25th at the Natick Elks. Captain Playboy challenges the Tokyo Monster for the Extreme Heavyweight Championship. The Masshole returns to take on the Cure, Lucas Chase. The Heathens debut against the New England Power Couple. Live TV taping of Heroes of the Ring Championship Wrestling powered by Tropster. WWE legend and Sergeant Nugget will be in action. Get your tickets at nwwextreme.com.
Welcome, everybody, to the PWZ podcast. I want to say hello and welcome to the powerful one, Ken Powers. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you doing today?
I am fantastic. I had a nice, beautiful weekend. Caught you at a show and then had a nice, restful Sunday as well.
Yeah, Saturday was a fantastic show over in Torrington.
Yep. For anybody that's listening, it was the Big Jim Cup Memorial show. Thank you. I'm having a brain fart there. And I just want to know, have you ever encountered Jim?
I only ever had one small encounter with him. It was right before things kind of went south and he had gone. I was there when he was at New World Wrestling Extreme, and they won, and him and Ryan Frost won the tag titles. So I was there for that moment when they went. I think it was them versus the Hoods in like a street fight, and they won those titles. And he seemed like a great guy at the time, but I was, at the time I was a young boy in the business, like very, very young boy. So I was, keeping my head down, just helping out with the show, doing what I can. But
I can't believe it's been almost 2 years. In the next few months, it will be that he's been gone. So I think that's kind of wild in itself. Yeah. So you're talking about working, being a young boy in the business. I guess you started, according to some research I did, that you had basically 2 runs kind of in professional wrestling.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yep.
So my first run, if you would even call it that, back in, I want to say it was like 2015, 2014, 2015. I was in college at UConn. While I was there, I've always wanted to be a wrestler, like ever since I was a kid. I was finally able to kind of save up the money. But during that time, I was originally training up at the Chaotic Training School, which is what it was at the time. Now it's New England Pro Wrestling Academy.
Okay.
But I was up there. I spent 7 or 8 months training up there. Helped out with a bunch of shows for Chaotic. I met a lot of people. The one thing I always like, there's not too much notable about that run, except for I started training there. And then like 2 weeks after I showed up is when the man now currently known as Flip Gordon arrived from across the country to start his wrestling training. So I've always kind of, had that personal connection with Flip since, we started training and, learning everything about the business together. Unfortunately, toward after the end of my tenure, I had to take some time away due to school and personal reasons. Things got lost. And then finally in the summer of 2020, I was able to, finally find my bearings again. Bully had finally opened up the school up here in Danbury, which is significantly closer than the New England Pro Wrestling Academy. So I talked to them. I went down there for a meeting, and the rest is history.
Is Bully still involved in the school?
Yes.
Okay.
He is there at least once a week.
Okay.
And I know it's definitely still difficult for him, given now he's got Busted Open. He's working NWA dates and he's working Impact dates. He's gotten a lot more involved on the physical, like performing side again.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's fantastic for him, but it's really nice that, it's really nice for the students of the school that he's still able to show up and, impart his wisdom on us at least at the minimum once a week.
Have you seen his NWA run at all?
Yeah. I mean, I've been watching some of the stuff he's done. Like he did the tables match with Mike Knox. I think recently they then had another singles match on Power. It's really interesting to see like him work as like this, like as very much a baby face in NWA. And then you go over to the Impact run and he's like hitting people's wives and like all this, like, typical Bully Ray, style of
That's
a character.
the difference between, companies and promoters and stuff. They want you to do one thing and then another wants you to do another. However, for fans that watch everything, it's kind of an inconsistent thing watching certain guys.
Yeah.
So what is your encounter with him, working with him, under him, training and such?
Yeah. He is very blunt when it comes to how he approaches things. He's not the kind of guy to beat around a bush unless there is a reason for it. If it's something where he's not going to like purposely mislead you, he is going to ask you maybe some leading questions to try and get you thinking in a certain direction when we're going over certain topics. But otherwise, I mean, what people have seen in other interviews and on TV, well, other interviews especially, like that is Bully Ray. He cares a lot about the business. He cares a lot about making sure people learn how to do it the right way too. He's very passionate about making sure the kids that he trains are trained exactly how they should be. Especially, I know he has his story of when he first came up and he was going to go train with one guy and then another guy was able to like poach him for a bit. And he had a very like, the guy who he first learned from it was not the guy he should have been learning from. He did not get that proper training off the go. So
I'm going to tell you a story before you continue that. I had that guy on my podcast recently, the guy you're referring to. You're probably referring to Sonny Blaze because Bully does not credit him at all for his training, according to Sonny. Sonny, of course, got into WWF because of Mario Mancini. He was working the independents, and Mario, said, "Hey, what are you doing here? Come up with me. You'll make a lot more money," kind of a thing. And Al, Sonny Blaze, was actually a very nice guy. It's just, according to him, he wasn't really necessarily. He only trained for a brief period, I guess, and he only notable guys he trained were Bully and Mikey Whipwreck, I guess. So, anyways, yeah, I don't know. That's got to be who you're referring to. I'm guessing. So
I most likely, but I mean, I try not to like. I get the purpose of the story of for me, the purpose of why he tells that story is that's like to show how much he cares about making sure certain things he might do. So kids don't get it at first. Like they're like, why is he doing this? Why is he doing that? But then like, maybe not immediately, but like, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line, after they've dealt with it, they've been in the industry for a little while. They come back and they're like, I get it now. Like this, it makes so much more sense now. Like you can't see it at the time because you just haven't experienced the other side of the coin. And then once you do, you're like, oh God, this is why he was pointing me in this direction. This is why he cares so much about those certain things.
You must make sure you're probably TV ready and make sure that you kind of don't get screwed in any kind of form. Because this is a guy that came up from an era that a lot of guys were getting screwed on the independents left and right. You know what I mean? So he wants to basically, I'm guessing, make sure that if you're training with him, you don't make him look bad by going out there and sucking and making sure that you're, like I said, television ready, that you can go out there and shine.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because I'm not going to give like too many like specifics, but like training wise, luckily with my previous experience before I got there, it took me a little bit less time than other guys to be able to get the okay to actually start taking bookings. But a lot of the guys who go to that school, it's like usually at least like 2 years of consistent 3 days a week at the school, learning as much as you can, doing your homework on the side before he'll give you the nod. But that's because he really wants to make sure, like, when you come out of this school, you are ready to go. You can go anywhere. You can find anybody, depending on no matter what their level of training is, and you should be able to at least put on a competent match. So,
right.
And I think it pays tremendous dividends to the kids who are able to get through that system and then are able to get out there and show what they can do. I mean, I will always play up my fellow Team 3D wrestlers, like my current tag team partner, TKO Kosenko. He was there for 2.5 years. He finally got a shot. Now he's, working multiple states. He's working multiple promotions. He's got multiple championships. He's really making a name for himself. Clipper Jones got his okay a little bit earlier, but he's finally kind of stepping into his own, especially as like a really consistent and inspiring babyface around the New England scene. You've got guys like Mucho Chris Moljo, who one of the older Team 3D guys up here in Connecticut, but he's done a lot of work around some of our other guys who go through there. Gio Galvano had made his way on there. He was a big Invictus name for a while, and then eventually he did some work for Impact. Like all these guys, they come out the door and they are ready to go. There's no like, oh, I come out the door and I need like a year of matches on the indies to figure out where I am. It's like, no, they come out and you can put them anywhere and they know they can handle themselves appropriately.
What about Randy Shawn working at training under him as well, as he's basically the second in command there, right?
Yeah, Randy Shawn. I love the guy. I'm gonna be honest. I can never sing his praises enough, man. Especially the farther I get into the working side of things and seeing like having him backstage at certain shows as well, since he's still at least somewhat active here in New England, it's really nice to be able to like have him there and really see real time how people are reacting to certain things. And then we can bring it to class, maybe like on a Thursday evening and then like talk about it, or at the show, it's like, oh, I need a little bit of advice on maybe I don't like this versus that. Like, I don't know which way to go. Let me ask him. But yeah, he's usually the guy there running the show when Bully's not there. And God, if there's one thing I can give him credit for any day of the week, it is if you stay focused with him, your ring cardio will be on point. That man can go.
I've got the pleasure, I guess you could say, of seeing that guy come up in the earlier 2000s. Jay Busta.
Yeah,
Jay Busta. I've seen him wrestle everywhere from New England Championship Wrestling, companies that aren't even around anymore, the NAWF, and all over, the old Connecticut Championship Wrestling. And I didn't really think a lot of times that certain guys would be around. I didn't really think that, he would still be around today. But he's still out there, and he's tremendous shape for being around this long.
Yeah, literally. One of my favorite things I used to joke about with him at the school is one of our younger guys. Shout outs to Mook. That guy at the school, he finally has gotten his chance to start working shows, and he was actually at the show in Torrington on Saturday.
Was that him and his brother, or was that
him and his brother?
Yep.
Him and his actual brother.
Oh, they're actually brothers. Okay.
Yep. But Mook is younger in years than Randy Sean's entire professional wrestling career. Like, I would always I'd every now and again we'd be at practice and someone would say something and I'd just be like, yeah, I'd mention it to Randy, be like, yeah, Mook's younger than your wrestling career. And he's just like, God, I'm old.
I was quite impressed by him and his brother over the weekend. I had never seen them before at all.
Yeah. Would you believe that was only their second match in front of a crowd?
Okay, that explains it then. So,
yeah, that was only their second match in front of a crowd. Their first match was last October for Lucky Pro. They had a 2-on-1 handicap match versus our trainer Randy Sean, and they've it's been great having those guys around. They were kind of the guys I really came up with inside of the Team 3D system. So I'm really happy to finally see them getting their shot to, work for the crowds and show people exactly what they can do.
Right. Let's see here. You talked about ever since you were a kid dreaming to be a professional wrestler. It's all you wanted to do. So I want to say, how did you get into professional wrestling? What was it that sparked you? Every kid loves mostly every kid loves professional wrestling. I, was kind of into it when I was 4 years old. And then 1984 was when it really started to take off. And I was kind of obsessed for the next 40 something years, so yeah. It still am at almost 50. So mine was the first thing I ever saw on television was seeing Roddy Piper on television. I was instantly hooked. Did you have a moment like that with yourself?
In fact, I have a moment almost exactly like that. I forget how old I was at this point. I always say it was 4, but I could have been maybe 3 or 5. But young little me sitting in front of the TV, I think it was Sunday Night Heat, watching wrestling, and I very vividly remember watching a Hardy Boys match. And I watched that match. I turned to my dad and I said, I'm going to do that when I'm older. And he just kind of goes, he just chuckles. He's like, yeah, sure, kid. And now here we are. It took a little while to get here, but I wasn't lying when I said I wanted to do this.
What's he think of that now?
Oh, he has been probably he's more on the silent side when it comes to it, but he's been one of my biggest supporters of wrestling. Yeah. I'm very lucky that both of my parents, my sister, have been very supportive of wrestling from the beginning because they knew how much it meant to me. But my dad was, back before my schedule became as packed as it is, he was at pretty much every show I was on. He was, buying tickets, driving out a couple hours each way to go see me if I was in Rhode Island or Massachusetts. He's always on social media sharing my posts. And, there was this one thing that he and I really had our main bond as father and son over was wrestling. So the fact that I'm wrestling now, I know it's really nice to have him supporting me on this journey.
That's amazing. I kind of have something somewhat similar, like not with my father, but my son comes to almost every show with me. I'm sure you've seen him, my little guy there, for probably the little pain in the ass that's running around most of the times. That's getting into trouble as I'm trying to record stuff. So, but he's a good kid overall. He has his favorites. He's got, Fly Nye is one of his favorites. He always has to go up to Fly Nye and Sunset and those guys there, who are two great guys, and I think.
Oh yeah, 100% agreed. I haven't had the pleasure of working anything with Fly Nye yet, other than I think he and I happened to be in a battle royal one time, but like we didn't really interact there. But I'd really love to run something with him and Sunset. I mean, relatively recently, it was January, the Paradise Disrupted. He and I finally got to tangle it up for a solid 8 to 10, and we had a really fun match, and I'd love to run it back with him again.
Sunset's great. He's doing a great job out there. He's the LA Fights champion, and he, man, I wish that I had been there for that show. That was the one of the most recent shows that I've missed because I was out because of illness, and I deeply regretted that, not going to that show, but I wanted to see that match. But yeah, I was able to find a YouTube clip either way. So
that's good.
Yeah. So outside of the Hardy Boys, did you have any other influences as a youngster?
So yeah, I mean, Hardy Boys were the main one. I mean, specifically Matt. Matt's always been my favorite of the Hardy Boys, and then even getting on later to V1, Mattitude, going into TNA Impact with the broken Hardys, and I like his ability to reinvent his character, to go to certain extremes when it comes to just that reinvention. No one would expect this guy who's been kind of relatively clean cut, I'm this extreme dude, and then all of a sudden he's dyeing part of his hair, frizzing it up, playing piano, talking about dilapidated fridges. I love that about him. But I guess if I have to point out at least one other that and this is going to be weird because people didn't really kind of appreciate this guy until now. Now that the run he's been on recently on TV, people are starting to appreciate him. But I'm not going to lie. I loved Sheamus. I still love Sheamus. Something about a big boy, just, big boys hitting each other, going hard, that strong kind of fighting style. I love that stuff, man.
No, you're right, I guess, to an extent, because when I was out of it for a little bit and I started tuning back in, and I could tune in, and that's when he was having the championship run. And I was like, who the hell is this guy? I was like, it's terrible. But over time, you pull it back a little bit and then give him time. He developed so much more. Now he's become one of my favorites on the entire roster there. He's, so I get where you're going with that.
Yeah. I mean, I know that first title run might have been a little too early for him, just because he was still kind of finding his feet in front of the crowd. But that world heavyweight title run he had, where he had those couple matches with Daniel Bryan, the 203 Falls match was fantastic. He had a good showing with Big Show. He pulled a great match out of Big Show during that time period, which is phenomenal to do.
Don't knock Big Show.
I'm not knocking Big Show. I'm just saying not everyone is capable of helping, of being able to make a match that good with the Big Show. And Sheamus was able to do that. And then going out to the bar and all that. He's done so much stuff that I absolutely love.
Him and Claudio as a tag team, I thought, were phenomenal. They had a great run, I thought, and I was kind of really upset when they decided to split them and put them on two different brands. I thought to me, it made no sense because I thought that they were such a great, group and going great forward.
Yeah, I mean, they gelled really well together. I mean, I still remember that first to 7 or that best of 7 series that kicked the whole thing off. They go 3-3. They draw in the final, and then they're like, you know what? You guys are teaming together.
That's awesome. It's a great concept. So, yeah. So, how did you discover independent wrestling? Was it just through deciding to, or did you know, or were you aware before that?
In my younger days, I had a little bit of a heads up, just because some of my friends, their older siblings, knew professional wrestling. They saw some local stuff, so like I had known about. I think it was like PWC or something. There was like an old promotion out of my hometown that used to run. And then like Northeast Wrestling, like I heard about them through that too. But I got more of my direct interaction and like introduction to that when I was in high school, when I first went to a chaotic 1-day fantasy camp, because you went to the fantasy camp and then part of doing the fantasy camp was you would get tickets to go to the next chaotic show. So I went up, did the fantasy camp, had a fun time, had a blast. And then my mom and I went up to that show, and I had an absolute blast just watching these, like, there wasn't really anybody I knew at the time, because like most of what I had watched was TV. So like getting to see all these like guys I'd never seen before working matches and working that smaller, like more kind of intimate crowd. It was really special. And then, then it's like, all right, I got to find more. I got to watch more. I got to see what's out there.
That's how I discovered it, or how I did it when I discovered that there was wrestling outside of WWF, the NWA, and WCW as a kid. I had to seek it. I would pick up magazines from like the convenience store or whatnot, and magazines were huge at the time that I was watching, like discovered wrestling. So anything I found, I read about in the magazines, I had to try to find. I used to get Memphis TV up here back in. I'm going back really old school, but so I used to get Memphis TV up here, and I got to see Mick Foley working Memphis way before he became a mainstream star, and guys like that. So it was really incredible to be able to see stuff like that, So yeah, and then I remember my first independent show was like sometime in the '90s at the North Haven Fair with Jimmy Snuka. So that was a lot of fun as well.
Yeah, the North Haven Fair. Gotta love it.
I mean, there used to be a lot of wrestling there. Well, now I guess Northeast still runs there, or they started to again, except for last year, it rained out. But
yeah, last year rained out. The year before, I was there helping in 2021. I was there.
Okay, I don't think. I might have went to that one. I think the last ones I went to was like Christian Casanova and JT Dunn before Casanova got signed. Probably like a few months before he got signed to NXT.
Yeah, I mean because the one in 2021 was, I think, headline was Brian Anthony, Ron Zombie in a hardcore match. Megan Bain had a match with Riley Shepard. Randy, my trainer, wrestled one of our other students, Gio Galvano. Like, I think Wrecking Ball had a match with Cole Carter, and this was like before he got signed to NXT.
Oh wow!
So like it was like right before it too. I think they had the match, and then like 2 months later, he was down in NXT.
It's pretty impressive that guys that could be working the North Haven Fair one day, and then next day, like a couple months later, they're just right there, right on NXT or what have you. So that's happened many, many times. Dijak has been there. Like I said, Casanova, tons of people.
Yeah.
So you've worked a bunch of matches. I'm going to ask you about some certain guys. Is that cool? That you worked with. I want to get your opinion on them. Going to get your opinion on working with them and stuff.
Of course.
All right.
I want to ask.
This guy's one of my favorites. I haven't got to see him in quite some time because he hasn't wrestled around at least in Connecticut, in probably over a year. But PJ Savage.
Ooh, PJ. Yeah.
This guy's phenomenal, man. He's great.
I absolutely love PJ. The match we had, unfortunately, I really wish that match was in front of a bigger crowd, because even with who was there and what we were able to do then, I know there was so much more capable in that match between just two guys who are willing to just go to town and smack the ever-loving crap out of each other for the fans. And it was phenomenal. And, now, like, I see PJ at a lot of shows now. He and I both work Invictus, where he's currently holding their Climb for Clout chase. We both work over at Titan now in New Jersey, where I get to see him a bunch now, and it's always fantastic seeing him. And I really hope I get another match with him in the near future.
I would love to see that. I just found that on YouTube today while I was trying to get some notes together for this, and I was like, oh my god, I gotta watch this. So
yeah.
Let's see. This guy, he's out injured currently. We were there for this, and I think this guy's going to be a star. This guy's got all the goods. He's got the promo. But Jack Dalton.
I was gonna say, you kept saying this guy, and I'm like,
oh, I didn't even do that intentionally.
The guy. Yeah.
The guy.
Yeah. I that was also very early into my time being able to take bookings. I think he was within my first 10 matches in front of a crowd.
Wow.
We were able to put together, we had a lot of fun talking. He's a great guy, both, behind the camera and whatnot, and he was really able to kind of turn it up that notch in front of the crowd, which was great. Because I guess back when he was working Chubb and Russell before that, he was working as a babyface, but he didn't want to work as a babyface. He wanted to work as a heel. So I showed up and I was like, oh, you want to work heel? Go ahead. I'm down to work, whatever. And we were able to put on a fun match there. It's been very unfortunate to be at both shows where he's been injured recently. Last time, with the most recent one being the ankle injury, and then before that with the knee. It's a couple of very unfortunate setbacks for a guy who has a ton of potential. He absolutely can carry this so much farther than people realize. He's got that something that makes him stand out from the crowd. So I'm really hoping he is able to recover, get healthy 100%. But when he is 100%, I want my run back.
I think that was only his second match back, if I remember correctly. When that's very unfortunate for him, because I was like, I was pretty excited to see him back in the ring, and I was like, hey, I'm there, and damn, I didn't realize it was nearly as bad as it was when he was getting carried out of the ring. I didn't know if he was just selling an injury or whatnot, but I spoke to his brother. Me and his brother are really good friends. So, and then he informed me later that night. So I was like, oh my God, I felt really bad. But as far as the star potential, the potential that guy has, I mean, he's really good on the microphone, and I think he's got this certain old school flair, like the old kayfabe era, the type flair, charm, whatever you want to call it, to him. So I think he, like you said, he has all the potential in the world to go so much further, provided he won't get injured.
Yeah, I think I'm hoping after the second setback, he's able to, kind of reevaluate certain things when it comes to his in-ring work and really kind of dial in on certain aspects, but also, be a little bit more cognizant of how he moves in the ring and certain things, just so he can protect his body for longer and be able to do this as long as he possibly can.
From what I heard, that one of the boards had slid underneath the canvas, and then he just fell in, and that's where he got his ankle caught.
That part I actually didn't hear about. I only knew where, because it was the very last thing of the match was the set up top and then the roll through for the sunset, and then moving, and I guess that would make sense why he lost his footing in a weird way.
I think his toe went into the gap. I think there was a gap that big or whatnot. And so I think he shared a slow-mo video of his ankle breaking, basically, and it was kind of cringeworthy.
Yeesh.
I don't like seeing stuff like that. I'm very sensitive when it comes to seeing.
Yeah, no, when it comes to those injury things, I hate absolutely watching those. It was a couple years back that one viral one went of the guy who hits his pose on the corner, hops off, breaks both his legs, landing on the canvas, and I'm just every time it kept going around viral, and I kept having to be like, no, scroll fast, I don't want to see that.
There's the guy that tried to do the what's the forward flip, that move that Billy Kidman used to do, the forward moonsault, whatever. And that guy, he just did the flip, landed face first on the turnbuckle.
Oh yeah,
as he was trying to jump. And then of course there's the famous Sid Vicious one where he jumps off the middle turnbuckle and just his leg breaks in half. And
Yeah. Oh,
It
God.
scared the shit out of me when that first happened. So, and his leg is just hanging there, being held together by his skin and knee pad. It's gross.
Yeah. Oh, God. I absolutely hate seeing those injuries. It's just,
Yeah, it's scary, and you feel bad. I feel bad for the person that it happens to, and you can scroll through TikTok. There's a lot of people sharing just injury videos. So
yeah. I don't get why. Like, why share the injury? Show anything else,
I know,
please.
right? Show a happy moment.
Show the good things.
So you worked Jake Lynn on 2 different occasions, once for Coliseum, once for Empire. Tell me about working Jake. Jake, I think, has a ton of charisma. He's one of the best talkers, I think, on the independents. He's only been probably wrestling 2 years, I think. And tell me the difference, you know, what you think about working Coliseum and Empire. I think that I'm hoping that Empire is going to come back. We're trying to get something together. And Coliseum, of course, has announced their next show for April 28th.
Yeah. I will make one small correction. Technically, I've worked Jake 3 times.
3 times.
Because
Okay.
I worked him at Coliseum, I worked him in Empire, and then we had a tag match for Alley Fights where it was me and TKO versus him and Lorenzo.
Okay.
But Jake he's very open and very good at listening when it comes to the show. He's very, like, I can agree, he's got a level of charisma to him that is not normally seen in a guy of his stature,
Right.
which I think is a really good thing he's got going for him. I think there are just some things he's just got to really, like, I think if he picks a couple of the things he's really good at and really starts to dial in on them, he can really take himself to that next level. I think it's a little bit of like, he's not sure which direction he wants to go.
Right.
Exactly. I don't, like, this is just from what I've seen. I'm obviously, disclaimer, I'm not trying to talk trash. I'm not trying to down talk him. I absolutely love the guy and I want to see the best for him, which is why I really hope he's able to dial in on what he really wants to do. And once he does that, I know he can really push his potential even farther.
Yeah, I think, like I said, that charisma, he's very funny when he starts getting on that microphone and talking trash to the crowd or his particular opponent, whether he's working babyface or heel. I prefer him as a heel because the insults he comes out with are just next level. So
agreed. I think he has to try and, like, hold himself back a little bit too much when he's working face. So I'd rather he just have that freedom to be creative with the insults and talk trash to everybody and anything. So
yeah. So you hit up let's try to say this again. I said it before we hit record. Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators. Okay, I got it. You work Ty Thomas. Ty Thomas there. It's a tongue twister when you try to say it all together. You work Ty Thomas. Tell me about working Dog and your opponent.
Dog was a very interesting night / like next day for me. So that show was on a Thursday. And what happened was Dog was running in collaboration with what was it, Rowan University. They were running through their after dark program for college students, aka the program colleges use to keep kids from going out and drinking. Where it was at the student union, and so there was you didn't sell tickets or anything. Just anybody who was a student was able to go in, sit down, watch the show. It made it a really different atmosphere from what I'm used to seeing. Like, it's a very casual style crowd, but also a crowd that was just into everything. Like, that was the kind of crowd where you literally could do nothing and get reactions out of. It was incredible to see. And Ty and I were able, this is the first time I've ever met the kid. He's very, I liked working with him. He was very, like, we were able to get along really well. I think we had a certain level of chemistry in that ring that definitely helped. We told him very good, solid story in the ring. But it was, the funniest part of that was the crowd didn't know who was heel and who was babyface at the beginning. So I come out first. I'm doing my entrance. I hit the pose, I'm looking grumpy. but like they're all cheering me like, yeah. And then like I walk down the steps, I turn to one guy and I'm like, shut up. You guys should be glad I even showed up to Jersey. And immediately the entire crowd just go like just that one little statement went from like they love me to God, we hate this guy.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But
yeah, go ahead.
I'd love to go back to Dog if they'll have me back. Absolutely phenomenal time.
Yeah, like I said earlier that I'm actually going up there at the end of the month, and I'm really looking forward to it. So I've spoke to the promoter on a couple of occasions. I was on a podcast with him December. It was an NWA related podcast, as they used to be a group that was a part of the NWA many moons ago, when they still had affiliations now before Billy Corgan bought it. So yeah, that's I'm going to be there, and I'm looking forward to it because it seems like they run a really good product. So,
oh yeah, definitely solid. I know you're going to have a good time out there.
Yeah. Tell me about Hunter Tarca.
Hunter, yeah.
This is another guy I think is great around here. He's got he's got some amateur experience, and he works that into his professional approach as well. And I think he's really good. And he's new Coliseum heavyweight champion as well.
New Coliseum heavyweight champ, beat Lucas Chase.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to feel horrible. I'm pretty sure the only time I've worked with Hunter was our tag match together for BST.
Yep.
Where it was like a very last minute, like XYZ people called off the show. We need people. Can you be here? So like Hunter, like none of his team, like I think both Lorenzo and Jake were like sick or like out of town or something. So they couldn't come. So I came in, and then the other team, I think like both guys, I think like Troy was supposed to be in the match, and then it was supposed to be Troy and like Marcos, like Magnificent Marcos. And I think Marcos called out at the end. So it ended up being Jay Haru, who happened to be there that day. That was very interesting because like it's so like it was a match of four guys who don't really have any affiliation with each other. But I think Hunter and I were able to find a little bit of like a little chemistry there, like even as a team there. And I'd love to like in the future, if we could maybe like play around with that a little bit more, see like where we could go of like either if it's another tag match or if it's, he's the new Coliseum champion. I mean,
there's your shot right there.
I'm just saying if you need a guy, I'm ready and willing. But unfortunately, I'm not going to be at the next Coliseum show because I do have a prior commitment that day.
Where are you working? Where are you working then?
That day I am working in the Bronx once again for Invictus.
Okay.
So In Bloom 3. Yeah, In Bloom 3. Check it out. It's going to be a great show.
Will that be on IWTV? Maybe?
Yes, it will be. All of the Invictus shows pretty much since the social media tournament have all been live on IWTV.
Okay.
So yeah, that like the last show we had, which was God, I am already blanking on the name. But it was at the Bronx Brewery. That show was live on IWTV, like Magnitude, Overdrive. All these shows are usually live.
Yep.
Many Saints of Ridgefield Park last December, which I was able to finally get my first win at Invictus, which was nice. But that was on the pre-show, so I don't think it was live on IWTV.
Well, now I'm going to have to tune in if you're going to be on IWTV. I'd make it a point when somebody I know is going to be on IWTV that I make sure to tune into that show, at least. So
I appreciate that.
I got to show my support for my Connecticut scene, New England in general, really.
Yeah.
This one I saw and I was like, holy shit, I wish I could have been at this match, literally, because this guy's a monster. You wrestled Wrecking Ball Legursky. Tell me about this match because, like I said, I wasn't there, and this guy is a beast. This guy, he's really good for his size. You know what I mean? In that playing that monster role, whether he's working babyface here in Connecticut, working heel on NWA TV, and he could pull it off either way.
Yeah, I have a lot of love for Wrecking Ball. He was, whether people might know this, Wrecking Ball was actually a Team 3D Academy student for a little while.
Yep.
So he was there when I was like training and learning. And he was really one of those guys who's helped point me in the right direction. He's given me a lot of fantastic advice. I've had the pleasure of working him on shows 3 times now.
Oh,
And
really?
the first time, which is probably the one you're talking about, my first ever match in front of a crowd was with Wrecking Ball Legursky.
This was scary.
He was already on NWA. Like, he was already this big name guy, you know, former Northeast wrestling champion. It was intimidating. Like, you know, some guys, you know, like you get a softball for your first match. It's like, oh, here's this local guy. Like, you know, people know him. Like, it'll be like, But then there's like, no, your first match is going to be NWA star Wrecking Ball Legursky. And I was fortunate enough that show. I had a lot of support in the crowd. I had a lot of friends and family. My favorite part of this, my mother had moved to California like 4 months prior to this. I told her I was having this match. She flew from California to Rhode Island just to watch me wrestle in my first match. And it was great. The crowd was fantastic. Not just my people, but like everybody there that night was great. Every time I get a chance to lock up with Wrecking Ball, it is an absolute pleasure. And I would do it for the rest of my career if I would. And I know a lot of people wouldn't be willing to say that, but I am. I've got all the respect in the world for him.
That's amazing. That really is amazing. That your mother came all the way from California to see that match. That's awesome. Yeah. That's amazing. I got 2 more on this list that I want to ask you about. The last one was at Coliseum, I believe. Your last match at Coliseum, Bloodsaw.
Yeah. That was the last Coliseum show.
Yep.
It was Bloodsaw, being a guy who's been around as long as he has. He has a really good mind for especially the crowd side of wrestling. He's very good at getting people at the show involved, whether it's like just cheering or direct, you know, callback kind of calls, like, you want to see something awesome? Yeah, awesome. Yeah. Like, he's very, very good at that. And I think the match we put together was very good. You know, it's a shame that my partner had to come out and cost me the win. You know, I definitely had him, you know, it's no doubt about it. I was definitely going to win, but I think, you know, for the greater good of social influence, I think we did what we had to do that night.
Yeah. I think that, like you said, he's very good to playing to the crowd and getting them involved. That's what professional wrestling is really about. You know what I mean? Getting that crowd reaction, getting that involved. And he's very good at that. And I've seen him wrestle straight matches where it's been literally not the last time that they met, but the first time I ever saw him and Chris Battle wrestle, they literally put on a clinic for about 20 minutes before any brawling or anything else happened. And it was probably the most amazing thing, wrestling, one of the most amazing wrestling matches I've ever seen. Because if anybody knows me, that I love the traditional style of grappling and professional wrestling. I'm not into hardcore stuff. I'm not into straight brawls really and all that stuff. I just like pure wrestling, and that was so fun to watch, to see those 2 guys work a match like that until, you know, I mean, it was still a good match either way. Second time that I saw them work, it wasn't nearly as good as the first time. So, not to insult the 2 gentlemen. So, this guy,
not every match could be the best, you know.
That's true. But how about Lucas Chase? This guy is out there killing it everywhere he goes.
Lucas Chase, God, yeah. A lot of big things with that match I had with Lucas. That was my first. That was as the record will show, because of certain things that happened other places. That was my first title match. That was my first ever main event on any show ever in my career. And something about the way we were able to work that for, I think we went 15 minutes. Something about how we were able to work that match for 15 minutes was, I would still say this is one of the best matches of my career. I think something about the way he and I were able to work together, the chemistry in the ring, both between us and between the crowd, I think was incredible. And I know there's so much more we can pull out of that, just because that was our first ever encounter in front of a crowd. I mean, we have had one other match that no one has seen and no one will ever see. But
tell me about that.
It's a simpler story than people will realize. So Lucas came to the Team 3D Academy for a seminar with Bubba. And part of coming to the academy to do seminars is you will have a match in front of Bubba with one of the students, where the entire match is called by whoever is having the seminar. So, because the point is, it's their seminar, it's their chance to learn, it's their chance to pick Bubba's brain. He doesn't care about seeing the collaborative side of calling a match. He wants to see how that person's mind goes when it comes to calling a match, when it comes to setting things up, because the point is to give the person who's paying for that seminar their money's worth. So,
right.
So at the time, I happened to be the guy who got drafted for that match. So he and I think we, did like a simple little 8 to 10 minute match that night. I thought it was great, but I think that's really what kind of kickstarted me and Lucas as I'd call him my friend. I would. I'm not sure if he feels the same, but I have a ton of respect for that guy. He's helped me get a lot of opportunities that I wouldn't have had otherwise, and I can't thank him enough.
He's a really good guy, and it's a guy that loves the business of professional wrestling. I've had him on this podcast about 2 years ago, so he's still, he had been wrestling a while, but he wasn't where he is now. You know what I mean? And it was probably one of the best conversations. I went back and listened to it recently, and there's so much. We talk a lot about the professional wrestling history in the 80s and stuff like that. So that was like, and his love for the business is just amazing, I think. So he's a guy that's next level, in my opinion, because of that,
For sure.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of respect for the old ways. I mean, he's very much, he uses a lot of the modern day stuff, but he always tries his best to pay respect to where we came from as a sport, as an industry. And that's not easy to do in this day and age. So the fact that he's able to carry it so well, it's phenomenal to see. I love it.
What's your opinion speaking of that, what's your opinion on, I guess, the way the wrestling has evolved in a way as far as like the traditional professional wrestling? And today it's like a variety show. There's all sorts of wrestling on a show, whether it be a death match, a comedy match, or whatnot. And where would you go with this?
I don't really like, I'm pretty okay with where wrestling is going, because I love the idea that wrestling can have something for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I love this business and as much as I love certain aspects of it, maybe I'm not as big a fan of other things. I'm not a big deathmatch guy. That's
right.
But there are people who absolutely love that. And I love the fact that there is plenty of opportunities for them to see it. There's plenty of places to work if you're into working that style. There's plenty of people who want to work that style. I absolutely love that there can be something for everyone. Now, is it maybe taking away from what wrestling used to be? Yes and no, because yeah, sure, wrestling used to be this kind of very traditional style thing, but even back in the day, we had, Texas death matches, we had bull ropes, we had things where feuds would escalate, and you needed those more extreme situations to, really settle bad blood between men. And I think that's fantastic. But now now people love that and they're like, I want to see that more often. Sure. I love the fact that like there are places like CZW, GCW. I mean, you even get it on mainstream TV now. Literally last night we had the Texas death match on Revolution.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that on a mainstream pay-per-view for a company owned by, Warner Broadcasting is able to put on something like that. And then on that same show, you've got, a traditional, like you've got a crazy like work rate style trios match. You've got a very like methodical, very like well thought out 60-minute Iron Man. You've got women showing exactly what they can do and why they deserve the spot they're in. You've got a four-way tag match filled with young guys who are really proving themselves and some older guys who are there to kind of, show the legitimacy of everything. I love the fact that wrestling can have something for everyone. And I will support that to the day I die. If that's, maybe it's not what I do, but it's not about what I do. What do the fans want? What do the people want to see? If there's something for them to see and it keeps bringing them back, better for that.
You got a point there. Like I said, it's a variety show in ways. I might not agree with everything that's on the show, but it's to bring all sorts of people in for whatever, what I mean, for what they want. It's professional wrestling brings people together. And there's nothing like professional wrestling in the world. You get all sorts of walks of life in that arena. And I've made some really great friends through professional wrestling after within the last 4 or 5 years. Guys like Don Kincaid, Fogman, and stuff like that, have become very good friends just from going to shows. And it's just amazing, that style, like the variety show, I guess you could say.
Yeah, if it gives everybody more to watch, I can't complain.
Absolutely. Before we get out of here, I'm just gonna ask you, what is your thoughts on what do you watch now, or do you still watch professional wrestling on television?
Yes, I mean, definitely, I still watch. I try to keep relatively consistent with watching, honestly, because a lot of my downtime, like my days where I'm not constantly running around and doing something, what's on TV, it's wrestling. Monday nights, I'll tune into Raw every now and again. Wednesdays is Dynamite. I'll try and tune in. Fridays, I'm usually busy, but I'll catch some replays if I can. I like to try and keep up with, I really do like a good amount of the stuff that the NWA is doing. I think they've got a lot good going for them that I don't think people really grasp, but I try to keep up with Power at the very least. Impact, I wish I watched a little bit more, but when I do catch them, like they've got such a phenomenal crop of talent over there that, like, any given day you could turn on the TV, turn on Impact Plus, and you see an incredible matchup of guys you wouldn't have really thought you wanted, but then you see it and you're like, God, why didn't I want this before? Like, why don't I want more of this? I need more of this. Yeah, I try at least that stuff. And then for my own purposes, when I'm studying on the old school, I try and pull up older school stuff. I've been watching a little bit of, I've been catching a couple of older Ken Patera matches, watching a little bit of that old school, Southern wrestling with like Lawler and Funk, those guys. Like, I would try, like, there's some things that I want to work on personally that I know that those guys in the past did incredibly well. So I want to make sure I'm watching from basically the masters of their craft and learn exactly how to handle that.
I didn't mean to laugh when you brought up Ken Patera's name. It's just that I was already under the impression that he might have been an influence on you in some form. I just didn't ask the question. Patera in his day was quite the strongman performer as well. So, I've been going back and watching a lot of the 1980 WWF Championship Wrestling that's been uploaded on Peacock as of late. I watch a lot of old school stuff as opposed to like as much modern stuff. I do watch some modern stuff, but and a lot of the stuff in that series of the Championship Wrestling era is leading up through the Bruno Sammartino and Larry Zbyszko feud, which is, to me, it's just, Bruno is one of my all-time favorites. I don't know how much you've witnessed of him as well.
Oh, I love Sammartino. That's great.
Yeah. So why don't you tell everybody what's coming up for Ken Powers and where they can find you.
So coming up, I'm trying to keep my schedule as busy as I can. I want to wrestle as much as I can. I want to be as many places as I can. I'm hoping maybe 2023, maybe early 2024. I can maybe do some traveling. I want to hit like the Midwest. I want to try and get to the West Coast. Eventually, I want to try and get out of the country and wrestle maybe Canada or Mexico, maybe go even farther. But in the immediate future, this Friday, we are in Hudson, Mass for Lucky Pro Wrestling, where my partner and I, TK Okasenko, will be defending our LPW Tag Team Championships. Newly crowned LPW champions, by the way. Lucky Pro, we're the reason your belts got revived. Thank us. We've got that going on. I'll be in New Age Wrestling up in Springfield on the 18th. New World Wrestling Extreme on the 25th in Rhode Island. Actually, no, that one's not in Rhode Island. That one's going to be in Natick. They're expanding up into Mass. We got that going on. I've got Invictus coming up in April. I've got Titan Championship Wrestling in Jersey also in April. I'm trying to be all over the place. And maybe, who knows? Maybe in the future we'll see a little bit more of the home stuff, a little bit more Connecticut. I think we have another 2TW show coming up in I think it just got moved to April 22nd. So I'll be there too. But yeah, my goal is to wrestle everywhere I can. And then if you forget about all this and you need a place to be reminded of it, you could follow me Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I think also TikTok. I think I have all the same it's at the Ken Powers on all social media. Follow me there. I post about all my shows, put up my promos, show everything. So if you ever want to figure out where to find me, best place to look.
I want to thank you for joining here today. It was a pleasure to sit down and talk professional wrestling, your career, and everything outside of the career that we spoke of as well. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was my absolute pleasure.